Hello, hello. You are warmly welcome to the part 2 of a Daniel Hayford's lecture series on an aspect of a nation building course themed the remarkable historical examples of successful nation building projects, operations, or efforts around the globe. The focus is on Germany as one of the most recognized, remarkable historical examples of successful nation-building projects or efforts. Germany is a country which is located in north-central part of the continent of Europe. The country traverses Europe's main physical divisions, from the outer ranges of the Alps northward across the varied landscape of the central German uplands and then across the North German plain. It is one of the largest countries in Europe and covers an extensive diversity of desirable landscapes. Such landscapes include 1. The tall, sheer mountains which are located in the south. 2. The sandy, rolling plains which you can find in the north should you choose to visit the country one day soon. 3. The forested hills which occur in the urbanized west part of the country. And 4, the plains of the agricultural east, where raw agricultural produce is produced and converted into finished products to be supplied to consumers within and outside the country. Did you know the country is said to have a spiritual heart, and that at its spiritual heart is located the superb east central city called Berlin? Have you been to Berlin before and lately? According to recognized authorities, the city of Berlin did not have its current magnificence in the beginning, and that it actually rose phoenix-like from the ashes of World War II after decades of partition and struggles. Wow, this is beautiful and should give hope to many people around the world that they too can achieve the same feat or better. This should especially be the case of those of us on the continent of Africa, whose continent have been partitioned and ruled for years. Ladies and gentlemen, Berlin is the administrative capital of a reunified Germany. Reunified Germany. It is blessed with the famous Rhine River, which reigns in the world of folklore, literature, song, and visual arts. The river flows northward from Switzerland. Its banks and those of its major tributaries have been decorated with hundreds of medieval castles, churches, market towns, and centers of learning and culture. Of interest is Heidelberg. Ladies and gentlemen, Heidelberg is the location of one of the oldest universities you can find in Europe. The university under consideration was established as far back as 1386. The place is also where you can find the Mainz. Historically, the Mainz is one of the most important population centers of the continent. These and many others truly constitute the centerpieces of the flourishing tourist economy of the Germans. They attract millions of visitors to the country every year because of its natural beauty and cuisine, including Germany's renowned wines and beers, as well as its culture and history. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know the story of Germany has not always been this fascinating? Have you heard it? Have you been told? They say that in the olden days, the name Germany did not describe a specific location. Instead, it described the loose, fluid polity of Germanic-speaking peoples that held sway over much of Western Europe north of the Alps for millennia, and that Germany, in that sense, is an ancient entity. It has been established by several authorities that the nation of German, in more or less its modern day form, emerged only in the 19th century. They say that the story begins at the time when Prussian Prime Minister called Otto von Bismarck chose to bring together dozens of German-speaking bishoprics, duchies, free cities, kingdoms, and principalities to establish the German Empire in the year 1871. Dearest nation builders of the continent of Africa and beyond, the Second Reich swiftly established itself as Europe's leading power and even obtained colonies on the continent of Africa and Asia, as well as the Pacific. That foreign empire broke down due to Germany's defeat during the World War I in particular, and the resignation, or if you like, the abdication or abandonment of post by Emperor William II. Did you know these proceedings were followed by serious economic depressions and extensive unemployment? Of course, I do not know whether there were unemployment associations or something similar at the time, but I have learned that there were political strife and civil war. The situation was not pleasant, and it even led to the ruin of the progressive Weimar Republic and the growth and development of the Nazi Party under one man by name Adolf Hitler. They say that when Adolf Hitler gained power in the year 1933, he chose to establish the Third Reich and started a disastrous campaign to defeat Europe and exterminate Jews and Roma or Gypsies, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, they say that whatever has a beginning has an end. And the Third Reich was not an exception. It crumbled in the year 1945 through the combined efforts of the Allied armies of France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, the United States, and other countries. Initially, the triumphant powers chose to divide Germany into 4 zones of occupation. Later on, they chose to divide the place into 2 categories, namely East Germany and the West Germany. The West Germany was also referred to as the Federal Republic of Germany, whereas the East Germany was called the German Democratic Republic. These 2 countries were separated for more than 4 decades by a long boundary. In the case of the East Germany, the boundary under consideration was marked by defenses designed to prevent escape. In fact, this continued until the collapse of its communist government in the year 1989. Ladies and gentlemen, the 480 square kilometers of the island of West Berlin were also ringed from the year 1961 to 1989 through the Berlin Wall, which ran through the city, and by means of a heavily secured wire mesh fence in the settings adjoining the East German side. During the Cold War, Berlin was a flashpoint between the Soviet Union and the United States. Nevertheless, the city deteriorated in terms of national and international wealth up until the year 1989 to the year 1990, during which a popular and peaceful revolution tumbled the government of the East Germany and re-established a unified Berlin as the administrative capital of a reunified Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, recall the fact that following the unification of Germany in the year 1871 and under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck, the country under consideration was taken through a nation-building process, which sought to and successfully integrated the diverse German-speaking states at the time into a single nation. Recall the fact that following the unification of Germany in the year 1871 and under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck, the country under consideration was taken through a nation-building process which sought to and successfully integrated the diverse German-speaking states at the time into a single nation. Furthermore, the nation-building process encompassed consolidating of political power, developing a modern bureaucracy, and fostering a considerable sense of German identity through language and cultural promotion. Dearest Nation Builders Association of Africa and beyond, what do you think are some of the key lessons which you can learn from the German situation? While you are probably thinking of what to say, note that some lessons which could be learned from the example of Germany include: 1. Nation building requires leadership, and the leader or the leaders should do everything legally possible to ensure that all the people involved choose to be united. The adage, "United we stand, divided we fall," will ring true everlastingly. 2. Diverse group of people who speak one language can be successfully integrated into a single nation. In other words, all the Akan-speaking people in Ghana and Ivory Coast, for example, could be integrated into a single nation. Yes, the Fanti, Ashanti, Akim, Kwewu, Ekweapim, Dentra, etc. can be integrated into one big nation with one common destiny called the United States of Africa. Great, beautiful, glorious, wonderful. Better still, all of the English-speaking nations of Africa can choose to become integrated into a single nation. Likewise, all the French-speaking nations can choose to become one, etc. But the best thing which could happen to the people of Africa is for all the people of Africa to come together to form what I call the venerable nation. The latter is not necessarily a lesson from Germany. It is something which our forefathers, especially those whose tongue never dies in the human world order or systems, such as grandfather Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and others, have been teaching and or preaching to us about right from antiquity. Unity is strength. 3. Key component of a nation building process should include consolidation of political power and development of modern bureaucracy. The latter should be done and handled appropriately and in an innovative way. The question is, what does it take to consolidate political power? And what is meant by the expression to develop a modern bureaucracy? Ladies and gentlemen, consolidation of power refers to the process by which a ruler or government centralizes authority and control over a region or state, every so often leading to increased political stability. Related terms include centralization, absolutism, and bureaucracy. The term centralization is when power is concentrated in a single authority or governing body, allowing for more efficient decision-making. What about absolutism? The term absolutism refers to a form of government where the monarch holds absolute power over their realm, consolidating all authority into their hands. And what about the word bureaucracy? The term bureaucracy, according to some authorities, refers to an administrative system which is characterized by hierarchical structures and standardized procedures which do facilitate or enable or smooth governance, as well as planning and implementation of policies. In other words, bureaucracy is a specific form of organization which is defined by complexity, division of labor, permanence, professional management, hierarchical coordination and control, strict chain of command, and legal authority. Did you know, according to some authorities, bureaucracy is distinguished from informal and collegial organizations? Ideally, bureaucracy is impersonal and rational and based on rules rather than ties of kinship, friendship, or patrimonial or charismatic authority. Note also that organizations which can be said to be bureaucratic occur in both public and private institutions of the various nation-states around the globe. Number 4, there is a need for nation builders to foster a considerable deal of a sense of national identity through one national language and cultural promotion. In Africa in particular, where there are many languages and people are proud of their languages, this can be achieved if and only if national interest supersedes all other interests. This necessitates leaders who are altruistic to a large extent and who can motivate the people involved to a significant extent that they can afford to develop and consistently grow an unwavering love and commitment for the nation under consideration. One way to achieve such a thing is by creating the national identity in a way which is more venerable than any of the existing tribal or existing group identities. Did you take note of it? The culture and the official language of a newly built nation or a nation under construction need to be promoted. To what extent do you think the culture and the language under consideration should be esteemed and promoted? Simple. They should be esteemed and be promoted above all others. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we will draw the curtain on the part 2 of the series on the theme, the remarkable historical examples of successful nation-building projects, operations, or efforts around the globe. Present or pose your questions and comments.